As soon as parents started spending extended periods of time at home with their kids in early puberty, which, in the late 19th century was around 14, let's say, 14, 15, they started complaining about them. They started finding them really awful. And in the past, most kids had started working when they got to be that age. They worked as servants in someone else's home, or they worked out in the fields. And there, of course, I'm just talking about white children in the US. For Black children, it was, that much worse through the middle 19th century. Um, the parents, once they really were stuck with them, and of course, and wealthy white parents were sending their kids to boarding schools by that age.
Mm.
So they really weren't spending this extended time. And once they were, they started to find them incredibly difficult and kind of unlikable. And then when junior high schools came into being right around the turn of the 20th century, um, this happened in part because of an issue of overcrowding, because people were having their kids stay in school longer, because there were more opportunities in the post-industrial, era. If you stayed in school, there were different kinds of office jobs you can do, and you could hope to have your status rise. And the K through 8 schools, which is what we had at that point, were just overcrowded. But there was also a feeling among education reformers. There was both a feeling that the kids were at a special stage in their development and needed something more than what an elementary school could offer. But there was also the sense that they were in a really yucky stage in their development and needed to be kind of contained together, to protect the younger kids. The younger kids needed to be protected from them, and they needed to be protected from the corruption of high schoolers. Not that many kids actually stayed through high school at that point, but those that did. And that's how the junior high school came into being. And many of the ways we talk about these kids now and the stuff that we get upset about and worry about with technology, et cetera, parents have been worrying about ever since they started spending a lot of time together, almost in
It
the same words.
you have a fascinating chapter about the history because I was just kind of flipping ahead and I was like, "Oh," and I started reading it and I thought, "Oh," and then I saw that what I had been reading had been written in, like, the 1950s, and I was like, "Oh, wait a second, I thought that was written for today."
It's incredible, actually, how similar it is. Even in the 1920s, parents were talking about the corruption of technology. There are all these newfangled kinds of technology, like the motion pictures, or radio, cars that were giving kids this new kind of freedom. Obviously, kids that young weren't driving, but older teenagers, and parents didn't like the language they were learning from their peers. They would just generally felt like, through elementary school, they had some control over kind of what their kids were doing and what they were seeing and who they were seeing. And then for junior high school, the schools would draw from a broader range of neighborhoods. So your kids could have friends whose families you didn't know. And, very much like today, there was just this fear of who knows who they're spending time with and what bad habits they're picking up, what bad ideas, what bad words. It was amazing to me to see how similar the complaints.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Ianla Van Zant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.